they guaranteed health care reform would not pass and it would be the president's Waterloo. Then after they lost at Waterloo, they vowed a full repeal of the reform. Then somebody said, but the voters like a lot of the reform, so they went back to partial reform. But in our third story, in today's GOP, no bit of temporary sanity goes uncorrected. Congressman Steve King of Iowa, a man who suggested secession after reform passed, back to campaigning for a full repeal of the law by filing a discharge petition. No jokes, please. The petition, which would need 218 signatures to force House Speaker Pelosi to put the repeal bill up for a vote, went largely ignored. As Talking Points memo reports, though, on Monday it had only 30 signatures. That is until the right-wing group Club for Growth emailed its members explaining Mr. King's discharge petition will be considered as a key vote on the club's annual congressional scorecard. That scorecard, considered one of the gold standards in conservative rankings, that in the Spanish Inquisition. So by Tuesday, the petition had 22 more signatures, with the Conservative Heritage Foundation adding pressure of its own. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Wednesday, an additional 14 Republicans climbed on board, including House Minority Leader Boehner and Minority Whip Cantor. They issued a joint statement. The American people asked Congress and President Obama not to pass the massive health care overhaul, and they were ignored. 3 months later, they remain opposed to it, worried about the consequences of it, having job creation, national Republicans speak, blah, 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 blah. Except quite the opposite is true. A new poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation shows that health care reform is gaining public support. 48% of Americans support the legislation. It was 41% in May. The increase also reflected in polls from Gallup, AP, NBC News, Wall Street Journal. Mr. Boehner supported the full repeal following his comments earlier this week, comparing the nation's financial meltdown to an ant. President Obama calling out the minority leader's remarks at a town hall yesterday. Today, Mr. Boehner taking the approach of I am rubber and you are glue.
For someone who asked to be held to a higher standard, President Obama spends an awful lot of time making excuses and whining about others. The American people want leadership from this White House, not childish partisanship.
Indoor tanning tax just went into effect today. Time now to call in co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington. Good evening, Arianna.
Good evening, Keith.
The Republicans had, I thought, steered out of the total disaster. They'd gone back to just pushing for partial repeal. Even Marco Rubio, for crying out loud, was saying, well, let's leave some of it. Now they're back to full repeal. Is there some sort of strategy here that the rest of us can't see?
I don't think there is a strategy. I think that, as you said, the Club for Growth is pushing and they respond. And I think it's more like congressional chaos theory. It's all like grandstanding. It's producing an enormous amount of noise and heated rhetoric and hoping that the public will forget that, in fact, health care reform passed. It's not perfect, but it's much better than what we had. And on top of it, as you said, with the Kaiser and the other polls indicating that the American public is actually now much more in favor of the bill that passed, the usual refrain that Congressman Boehner uses, which is the will of the people, the Democrats did not listen to the will of the people, will be very hard for him to continue with.
One thing about this, I'm wondering if he didn't let a cat out of a bag here, because to repeal health care reform, you don't just have to win the House and the Senate. You have to win a veto-proof House and Senate, which would mean more than a 100-vote swing in the House, which would be an all-time record by nearly double, and 26 seats just in this year's Senate midterms. If you're not going to get that, why not promise the moon of the full reform? Is that what Boehner is unintentionally signaling here? He's not going to get it, so what the heck, shoot for the moon?
Yes, but you're being so logical, Keith.
I know.
This is not really logical, because even the discharge petition would need 218 votes. So really, nothing is going to be done. So this is purely about changing the subject. And right now, it is also incredibly irresponsible, because there's a very important subject that needs to be discussed, which is what's happening out on Main Street with people losing their jobs. And instead of having that real debate and even passing a bill for unemployment benefits, which still has not passed Congress, they're creating all this noise. And of course, the one piece of good news is that there's an enormous amount of dissension, growing dissension within the Republican ranks, and we'll see where that leads.
To that point, Politico reported that there is a second discharge petition from Wally Herger, the congressman of California and the proud right-wing terrorist infamy from one of his town halls last year. Mr. King's deal would repeal what the Senate passed before reconciliation. Mr. Herger's deal would repeal and replace portions of the bill that were included in reconciliation. But both Boehner and Cantor have signed both of these. The right-wing blog Red State said that the two leaders are implementing a strategy that makes it look like they are on your side, but are in fact stabbing you in the back. Why would these two guys be supporting conflicting positions and angering the smarter members of the right wing that they otherwise seem to be courting?
Because they really continue to hope that they're not going to notice, or they're going to be quiet and not say so. And it's not just members of the right wing who are complaining. You also have Lindsey Graham, who is supposed to be one of the more moderate Republicans, complaining in the upcoming New York Times profile of him on Sunday about the Tea Party movement. And really, the question he asks about the Tea Party movement, which is, okay, they want the party back, what are they going to do with it once they get it, is the question we should be asking of the Republican Party. Okay, they want the country back. What are they going to do once they get it?
They're just the dog chasing the car at this point. Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Post, always a pleasure, Ariana. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Keith.